The first time I met him, he was carrying a tray of half-empty wine glasses and apologizing for bumping my chair. It was a company dinner, one of those loud, glittering events where everyone pretends success smells like champagne and money. He looked nervous, maybe new. I slipped him a 50 at the end of the night and said, "For not spilling anything on my boss." He grinned and said, "Thanks, maybe one day I'll be sitting at your table." I laughed, thinking it was a cute joke. Turns out, he wasn't joking. A year later, I was sitting in my corner office when HR buzzed me. "Your new junior analyst is here to see you." I said, "Send him in." The door opened, and there he was, same face, same grin. Dressed in a crisp shirt this time instead of an apron. "Good morning, Ms. Alston," he said. "It's great to finally meet you properly." For a moment, I couldn't place him. Then it hit me. The waiter. The 50. The joke. "Wait," I said slowly, "you worked at Benedict's Steakhouse," he finished, smiling. "Best tips I ever made." I laughed, though something in his tone made me pause. He wasn't bragging, he was remembering. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked proud. As weeks went by, I learned his story. He'd been working nights while finishing his degree, juggling shifts and exams. He told me once, during a late project, "People like to think waiting tables means you failed somewhere. But it teaches you everything: reading people, patience, timing." Half the executives I serve wouldn't survive one night doing it. I couldn't argue with that. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd once tipped him for surviving my arrogance. Back then, I'd been too busy trying to impress my superiors to notice the people carrying the plates. He'd remembered me, though. "You were kind," he said once. "Most weren't." Months passed. He worked hard, learned fast, never asked for favors. Then one morning, I walked into the office and saw him standing at the front of the conference room, leading the meeting. My meeting. The one I was supposed to run. "Sorry I'm late," I said. "Didn't realize you were covering." He smiled. "Not covering. Presenting." Turns out, he'd pitched an idea directly to upper management while I was on vacation. They loved it. "Promotion material," they said. I wasn't even mad, just impressed. After the meeting, I congratulated him. "Seems I'm working for you now," I joked. He laughed softly. "Guess that makes us even." 6 months later, I left for another role. On my last day, he stopped by my office, holding a coffee cup and that same easy grin. "You know," he said, "you once told me to keep aiming high." I just didn't know I'd be aiming this high. I smiled. "You earned every inch of it." He hesitated. "You too, boss." Then, with a wink, "I mean, former boss." When he left, I sat alone for a while, thinking about how strange life is, how the people we overlook sometimes circle back and hold the doors we used to walk through. The waiter I tipped last year walked into my office today, then he called me boss. And I realized that real power isn't in the position you hold. It's in how you treat people before they ever get there. The first time I saw him, he was balancing a tray full of glasses that were clearly too heavy for one hand. It was the company's holiday dinner, the kind of event where executives bragged about investments while servers pretended not to exist. He'd accidentally brushed against my chair, murmured an apology, and handed me a napkin before I even realized I'd spilled wine. "You're good at this," I said lightly. He smiled, that tired but confident kind of smile. "For now," he replied. When the check came, I slipped him a generous tip and wished him luck. I didn't think about him again. That was a year ago. This morning, HR buzzed me. "Your new data analyst is here, Ms. Reyes." I told them to send him in. The door opened, and there he was. No apron, no tray. A clean shirt, sharp tie, and that same quiet composure. "Good morning, ma'am," he said. "We actually met once before." I blinked. "We did? At Maison Grégoire. You tipped me a 50. I laughed before I could stop myself. "That was you?" He nodded, amused. "That was me." He wasn't embarrassed. If anything, he seemed proud, like someone who'd earned the right to stand in every room he entered. I respected that. Over the next few weeks, I noticed how quickly he learned. How he stayed calm under pressure, how he never treated anyone like he was above them. There was no arrogance in him, just quiet drive. One evening, after a brutal deadline, I found him still at his desk. "You're working late," I said. He shrugged. "Feels weird to leave before the work's done." "Old habit. From waiting tables?" I teased. He smiled. "From surviving." Months passed. His performance was impossible to ignore. When the senior analyst left, I put his name forward. The board questioned his experience. I told them to question his results instead. They promoted him 2 weeks later. This morning, he walked into my office again, not as a subordinate, but as a peer. "We'll be sharing this floor now," he said. "Apparently, I'm getting your old team." He grinned. "Looks like I work with you now." I studied him for a moment, the man I'd once handed a tip to, as if that moment summed up his worth. "You've earned it," I said quietly. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you," he said. Then, with a faint smirk, "Would you like me to grab you a coffee, boss?" We both laughed. That night, after everyone left, I sat at my desk thinking about how much can change in a year. How people rise quietly, unnoticed. Until one day you turn around and they're standing beside you, or ahead of you, and you realize they always belonged there. The waiter I tipped last year walked into my office today, then he called me boss. And I couldn't even be surprised. Some people serve tables. Others serve time, purpose, and patience, until the world finally catches up to their worth. The first time I met him, he was wearing a white apron, his hair tucked messily behind one ear, balancing a tray of coffee cups that rattled with every step. It was at a client dinner, one of those painfully pretentious restaurants where the service is invisible until someone wants to be seen. He'd accidentally spilled a few drops of water on the table near my boss. Apologized immediately, and got a lecture about professionalism. I remember slipping him a larger tip than usual when I left. "Don't let people like that ruin your night," I said. He smiled faintly. "Don't worry. I won't be here forever." That was last year. This morning, the HR assistant knocked on my office door and said, "Your new analyst is here." I looked up from my laptop and told her to send him in. The door opened, and there he was. No apron, no tray, just a dark suit, confident posture. And that same quiet intensity I remembered. "Good morning," he said smoothly. "We've met before, I think." It took me a few seconds, then it hit. "You were the waiter," I said. He laughed lightly. "I was the waiter. But that was temporary." He sat down and began discussing his credentials, degrees, projects, previous roles. His resume was impressive, but what caught me off guard was his composure. He wasn't the nervous, apologetic version I'd met in that dim restaurant. He'd grown into someone self-assured, someone who knew he belonged here. Over the next few months, he became one of the best people on my team. Calm under pressure, respectful, sharp. Never bitter, never trying to prove himself. Just quietly excellent. And every now and then, I'd catch him smiling when we'd pass the company cafeteria. Reminds me of my old job, he'd say, half joking. Except the tips are worse. Then came the promotion cycle. He'd earned it, objectively, easily. But part of me hesitated. I didn't want people thinking I was doing him a favor. So I made sure his work spoke louder than anything I could say. It did. The board approved his promotion unanimously. A few weeks later, I walked into a meeting and found him already standing at the head of the table, presenting. My boss, now his colleague, gestured toward me. "You two already know each other, right?" He grinned. "Oh, yes. I served her dinner once." The room laughed, but I didn't. I smiled instead, a little proud, a little humbled. After the meeting, I congratulated him. "You've come a long way," I said. He shrugged. "We both did. You treated me like a person when no one else did." I didn't forget that. Before he left my office, he paused in the doorway, smiled, and said, "See you tomorrow, boss." It wasn't mocking. It was gratitude, layered with a quiet kind of poetry life rarely gives you. Twice. The waiter I tipped last year walked into my office today, then he called me boss. And it wasn't revenge. It was symmetry. The universe doesn't always punish. Sometimes it just completes a circle. The first time I met him, he was refilling my glass at a networking dinner I didn't want to be at. My boss was beside me, bragging about quarterly numbers loud enough for the next table to hear. The waiter, young, focused, polite, accidentally brushed my arm when reaching across the table. My boss scoffed, muttering something about people needing to learn proper service etiquette. I caught the flicker of embarrassment in the waiter's eyes and handed him a 50 as I left. "Don't let jerks like him make you smaller," I said. He smiled, quick and sharp. "Don't worry. I won't be serving him forever." That was a year ago. This morning, HR sent me a message. "Your new data hire is here for onboarding." I said, "Send him in." The door opened, and there he was. No apron, no tray, just a dark gray suit, a calm posture. And that same measured focus I remembered. "Miss Carter," he said, shaking my hand. "We've met before." I frowned, trying to place him. "Last year," he said. "Maison Leckler. You tipped me." For a second, I laughed. "You're kidding." He smiled. "No. You told me not to let people make me smaller." I didn't. He wasn't smug, just quietly proud. Over the next few weeks, I learned he was brilliant, sharp with numbers. Unafraid to ask questions, unfazed by the corporate games everyone else played. When he spoke in meetings, people listened. Even my boss, who barely remembered his own staff, started quoting his reports. I'd sometimes find him in the break room late at night, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. "Don't you ever go home?" I asked once. He grinned. "I used to work 10-hour shifts for tips. This feels like vacation." By the end of the quarter, he'd outpaced everyone on the team. He'd become indispensable, the kind of person the company had to notice. And they did. The day promotions were announced, I found his name right below mine on the list. Senior Data Strategist. That afternoon, he came into my office, hands in his pockets. That same quiet confidence in his eyes. "You deserve it," I said. "So do you," he replied. Then he smiled, a little teasingly. "Funny how tables turn, isn't it? Last time I saw you, I was serving yours." I laughed. "Now you're serving boardrooms." He nodded. "And you're still giving good tips, this time in advice." Before he left, he turned in the doorway and said, "See you tomorrow, boss." The word wasn't mocking, it was grateful. A full circle acknowledgement. That night, I thought about that dinner, the noise, the arrogance. The way he stood invisible among people who measured worth in titles. I realized something. It isn't the world that changes. It's the people who refuse to stay where they're placed. The waiter I tipped last year walked into my office today, then he called me boss. And I didn't feel superior. I felt proud. Because sometimes revenge isn't a sharp strike. It's success spoken in calm voices by people who outgrew the tables they once served. The first time I saw him, he was a waiter at a downtown restaurant my company frequented. Young, polite, and too quick to apologize. It was a networking dinner full of noise and money. The kind where people talked over the staff like they were part of the furniture. My boss snapped his fingers for another drink, and when the waiter hurried over, he bumped my chair slightly. "Watch it," my boss barked. The kid muttered an apology, eyes down, shoulders tight. When he handed me the bill later, I slipped him a generous tip and whispered, "Don't let people like him make you feel small." He smiled for half a second, that quiet, defiant kind of smile. "Don't worry," he said. "This isn't forever." That was a year ago. This morning, Our called to say the new department hire was waiting in my office. I told them to send him in. When the door opened, it took me a full 5 seconds to realize why he looked familiar. "Good morning," he said with that same smile, only steadier now. "We've met before, I think." I blinked. "Maison Rue," he added. "You tipped me a 50. I laughed, caught somewhere between shock and pride. "You remember that?" "Hard to forget," he said. "It paid for the textbooks I needed that semester." Over the next few months, I watched him work. No arrogance, no entitlement, just quiet precision. He was early to every meeting, stayed late without being asked, and never once acted like the world owed him something. It was strange, watching someone climb the same ladder I once did, but faster, cleaner. With purpose instead of ego. One afternoon, I asked him why he'd switched careers. He shrugged. "I used to serve tables to learn people. Patterns. Who looks at you, who doesn't. Turns out, that's all business really is, watching people and knowing when to move." By the end of the year, I wasn't his supervisor anymore. The board had noticed him, his numbers, his intuition, his quiet intelligence. They promoted him. My team became his. I wasn't bitter. If anything, I was impressed. The day the announcement went public, he came into my office, same calm confidence as always. "I wanted to tell you in person," he said. I smiled. "You earned it." He hesitated, then grinned. "Still feels strange though, calling you boss." I laughed. "Well, life's got a sense of humor. So does karma," he said softly. Before he left, he glanced back at me and added, "You were the first person who treated me like I was already more than a waiter." I didn't forget. After he was gone, I sat there for a long time, thinking about how small moments, a smile, a word, a tip, can ripple into something much bigger. We spend so much time climbing ladders that we forget we all start on the same ground. The waiter I tipped last year walked into my office today, then he called me boss. And it wasn't revenge. It was grace, the kind that humbles you when life hands back the kindness you once gave away without expecting it.